Welcome to another stage analysis video. It's Sunday the 5th of November 2023. Guy Fawkes night here in the UK, so lots of fireworks going off in the background at the moment, so hopefully that won't interrupt the recording. Lots to get through this weekend as always, but I'm going to start off with a look at some of the week's significant bars, as there was obviously a lot of strong moves this week based on the short covering rallies we saw in the market. So I want to cover some of the more significant bars with strong volume that are either already in stage 2 or close to potential breakout points, not the stocks rallying off of the lows as such. So if we start off with PLTR here, this is just over around a 3-year chart here now, so since its IPO back in 2020. So it had an initial IPO base here for around 6 weeks before breaking out into what's known as the IPO advance phase. So the IPO-AP is what we mark up on the chart here. So this is from the life cycle trade book, where they did an in-depth study on the different IPO stocks, and it syncs really well with the stage analysis method. So I always find it's really useful to start off with their markup and how they looked at the different stocks at that point before moving into using the stage analysis. So after the IPO advance phase here, which is an equivalent of a stage 2, started to roll over, and we started to obviously form a sideways range through here for a good year or so through 2021. Obviously a big shakeout here. At this point through here, it started to make an initial breakdown, which potentially would have been a stage 4 breakdown, but as you can see, the 30-week moving average was still rising at that point. So that's something we avoid in the method. We don't, when the 30-week moving average is still rising, we don't obviously look for breakdowns at that point, as it's potentially still too early, and you've got much more chance of this happening, which is a spring type event where it comes back in, the Wyckoff spring, coming back into the range again. So you can see here, this broke down this broader structure here, and up thrust here, significant bar came back in, last point of supply, and broke down through. So moved off into stage 4 and started to break down through this area, and then came back in, started to base after gapping below the IPO week low there back in 2022 when the market was selling off in stage 4. So since then, early 2023, it's recovered. It's had a really strong year so far. So since the early part of the year, so 3rd of January week here, you can see it's started off and has moved up over 180% so far. So big week this week on plus 25%. So broke out into stage 2 back in May here. Did have an initial attempt into stage 2 back in February here, but you can see it squatted a little bit into the old resistance. So you got this old zone where it had struggled previously back through and made swing lows in 2022 and swing high areas, and it pushed out and fell over at that point and came back in underneath the 30-week moving average. So this, although it was technically a stage 2 attempt on the daily, if you had taken that, it would have stopped out as it came back in through and started to roll back under the 30-week moving average again. So a new attempt back in May again, much stronger. You can see significant volume coming in for multiple weeks, so not just this single week push out and then week volume following. So this one showed real momentum, pushed out, and then obviously has been going sideways now for multiple months here. Did have what we see a little head and shoulders type pattern that was developing. Lots of people were watching that, but again, it was still above a strongly rising 30-week moving average at that point. Didn't break down, started to move back above the right shoulder of that and make a continuation attempt. So head and shoulders continuation. Did come back in again a bit, but this week on earnings has gapped back up again and rallied through on Thursday and Friday to make some higher highs. So if we drop onto the daily chart here, you can see that we started to make obviously higher lows and started to make obviously higher highs through this area. So small change of behaviour at the moment. You can see on that, if we put the ATR bands on here, it started to move back above this 1 ATR level. So as we know, when they're above the 1 ATR level, this rough line here that I'm drawing through there, you tend to be in a short-term uptrend, and when you're below it on the minus 1 ATR level, you tend to be in a short-term downtrend. So when you're in a sideways range, you chop around between those. So at the moment, we're pushing back above, and we're above the plus 2 ATR level, which we did briefly get back above again in October before it rolled over, but we are starting to show a little bit of a change of behaviour here and some strong volume on the break up through. So it's looking more promising at the moment for, and this is what we would consider with this week's move, a stage 2 continuation with a break above that near-term pivot there. So we want to see this follow through and carry on into stage 2 further. So at the moment, back to the stage 3 highs, so back in this area through here. As I said, this was the stage 3 range back here. So at the moment, we've still got around 50% to get back towards the top of the stage 3 highs there. But back to the 2021, early 2021 highs, it's over 130%. So still plenty of room in order to challenge those old highs if it does continue in stage 2 here. But obviously could still fail if the market turns around again at this point, but at the moment looking for a continuation move higher with relative strength here, continuing to outperform versus the S&P 500 well above a rising zero line here, which is the 52-week moving average of the stock divided by the S&P 500. So we've also, another one of interest this week, seen lots of people taking note of as well, was up in the watch list, was DKNG. So this had a stage 2 breakout back earlier in the year, back in February, held up really well on what's known as the backup through there, came back into the stage 2 breakout area and held that, stabilized and started to push back out again. So this area through here is your, obviously as it starts to push back out again, the secondary entry point in the method for the investor method. And now we've got a stage 2 continuation attempt at the moment. So you can see on the weekly bar here, just making a slight higher high. It did dip below the 30-week moving average briefly here, so technically moved into early stage 3 at this point, but has recovered this, and so now it's technically back attempting a stage 2 continuation. Some big volume and obviously a big spread on the bar, closing near the high of the bar at the moment, relative strength above Mansfield's zero line and making new highs. So technically hasn't cleared all of the resistance zone yet, but it is attempting to make a stage 2 continuation at the moment. So at the moment would still give it the benefit of the doubt in stage 2. Quickly look at that on the daily chart. You can see that significant bar on Friday there, 16.46% move on the earnings results as it started to come through and started to break multiple short-term pivots here. Get the ATR bands up, you can see it touched the free ATR level there, so hasn't been at the free ATR level since back at this point here in July, where it was moving out, and obviously earlier in the breakout moves back here. So generally short-term extended with this. We want to see how it consolidates or how it grinds around this kind of area. We don't want to see it ideally come much below the halfway point of this significant bar, but at the worst we don't want to see it undercut the low of this bar, so that would show a sign of weakness there. So we want to see some strength. It's starting to hold and build at least in this area and potentially higher. Another one highlighted on the Twitter feed on over the weekend here is INFA. So this one in the software group has a really good classic Wyckoff accumulation structure here. So you can see the accumulation structure doesn't necessarily have to just happen during stage 1 or the latter part of stage 4. You can see when the structure happens, we're in stage 4 through this area, it attempts to move into stage 1, it rolls back into stage 4 again through here, and then it comes back into stage 1 again and out into stage 2. So it encompasses stage 4, stage 1, stage 2, all in this accumulation zone. So you can see the schematic across here. So what we do is we draw from the selling climax, the SC point here, and the automatic rally point. We draw the start of the structure. So that's phase A, potential structure. That's just our initial range, and then we draw a rectangle across there. You've got our secondary test, the ST, some upthrust action, the UTA through here where it pushed out for a brief amount of time. We've got shakeout at the bottom of the range here, attempted to spring, came back in again, and then the terminal shakeout. This is spring number 1 where it shakes, it completely breaks down, but then reverses strongly. So it's come back into the range again. See a fake move to the downside, which has been quickly reversed within a number of weeks there, and then has come back in, started to move back above the moving averages. So this week here is technically your stage 2 breakout week. You've got the rising 30-week moving average breaking multiple weekly pivots through that area there, so somewhere through this area, obviously your backup area, and it came in for a second attempt on the backup. So this is our backup range as such. It dipped below the bottom of that area, touching the the previous pivot lows and then reversing strongly this week. So again, if we look at this on a daily, let's go onto the free ATR bar, so you can see it's run up to the free ATR level for 2 days in a row here, so very extended in the short term, heavy volume coming in, massive gap on earnings low, so it's cleared the top of this near-term structure here. So any kind of pullback, you want to see it hold around the 22 area, not getting much below the 21.5 area at the low of this significant bar here as it gapped up from on earnings.